Hey everybody, welcome back to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com and to another installment of Questions and Coffee with David. This is where I get together every single morning over a nice hot cup of coffee and I look at all the questions that came in via email, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter and try to consolidate that in a way where I can answer your questions in video format to help you make better music in your home studio. So before we get to this week's questions, if you would do me a big favor, please hit that subscribe button below if you like what you see in this video. Also head out to facebook.com/homerecordingmadeeasy as I have a lot of content on Facebook that is not always a part of YouTube. Also head out to my Twitter account at HomeRecordingMadeEasy and follow me there as well. And once again, if you want more tips, tricks, concepts, and training around all aspects of home recording, mixing, and mastering, as always, head out to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com. Check out the Made Easy series and the Quick Mix series and the blog and all the free content that's on Home Recording Made Easy. That will help you make better music in your home studio and bring your productions to the next level, I promise you. So now let's get our cup of coffee together and let's head on over to question number 1. Okay, question number 1 comes from YouTube, and it comes from a follower of mine called Nyston. And Nyston writes, "Hi, I'm a beginner, and I'm thinking about buying. I'm a beginner, and I'm thinking about buying one." He's talking about the Series 3 mixer. What do you think about the Series 3 compared to the 32AI digital mixer and other digital mixers? What don't you like about the StudioLive Series 3? It's hard to get it to work and mix with Studio One, the DAW. Okay, so basically what he's asking is, what do I like about the Series 3 mixer? How do I compare those to the other digital mixer, whether it's the PreSonus mixers or other companies' mixers? And what don't I like about it? And is it hard to get it to work with Studio One? Okay, so perfect. Number 1, the Studio 3 Series 3 mixer, to me, is by far, hands down, the best digital mixer on the market to date. I have had and have owned a couple of the older versions of the StudioLive by PreSonus, and those were fantastic mixers as well. I used them for years, both in a live situation as well as my home studio, band rehearsal rooms, and they were a super easy mixer to use, the older versions of the StudioLive. I just recently got the StudioLive 32, as you well know, and so far I love it. It is a quantum leap ahead of those other mixers. Not that those other mixers were bad, they just packed all the great things about the older version of the StudioLive, built it into the Series 3, and then added a bunch of additional things. Really, the Series 3 mixer, from what I can see so far, and I only have about a month's worth of experience with it, it can do anything that you wanted to do in the studio or live. I have yet to come across a situation where I could not get the StudioLive to do what I wanted it to do. So that's what I'll say. As far as comparing it to other digital mixers on the market, whether it be the Behringer X32, I know, which is another company's mixer that is the competitor of the StudioLive series. I have not personally used the Behringer mixers, but I know people that have them, and they got some good points and they got some bad points. I don't hear a lot of positive feedback about that mixer. Some aspects of it, yes, but there's a lot of quirks, and from what I've heard, things that, could have been better as far as that mixer is concerned. So I would probably tell you that the Series 3 mixer by PreSonus is probably better than that. Allen & Heath also makes a digital mixer called the QU32, which I've seen online. Again, I haven't physically touched one myself. That looks a lot more similar to the way the Series 3 mixer functions, and that's probably a great mixer as well, a little bit more expensive. But if I had to choose between the PreSonus mixer and the Allen & Heath, and I had to make that decision, I would choose the PreSonus mixer every day, just because I am a Studio One user. I like a lot of what PreSonus does with their equipment. They have great support, and I've just had great luck with the older versions of the StudioLive. So that's what I like about the StudioLive Series 3. What do I not like about it? So far, not much. To be honest with you, the only thing I don't like about it today, and you've asked this at the end of your question, was, does it work with Studio One? Today, it is not a surface control unit. As of the recording of this video, which is the beginning of April 2017, it does not control Studio One as a surface control. However, that is going to happen. It is something that was that's being worked on in a firmware update. And when is that going to be released? There's a lot of speculation. My guess is somewhere between June and August of 2017, which is a few months away. That will be a full-on surface control for Studio One, which is the main reason why I bought the mixer in the first place. once it becomes a full DAW surface control, now I really think the mixer is going to be just out of this world, and it's going to be great. And I know that is going to happen. There's already a DAW button on the StudioLive mixer that is inactive right now, so that's obviously coming. It's not just a rumor. So that is what if I had to say that's what I don't like about the mixer today, that's what I don't like about it. I wish that the mixer was released with that already done. But hey, it's coming, and from what I understand, it's not only going to be able to work with Studio One, but it should also be able to work with all other major DAWs, Cubase, Sonar, probably maybe Pro Tools, I don't know. So it's going to work with other DAWs as well, from what I'm told. So I really think it's great. So that's what I would tell you as far as how they compare to other mixers and what I like and don't like about the Studio One. I think it's a fantastic investment, and if you're in the market to buy a digital mixer, I would seriously consider the PreSonus before looking at the other brands. That's just my opinion. So again, thanks for writing in. I hope that answers your question. Now let's head on over to question number 2. Okay, question number 2 comes from YouTube, and it comes from a follower, GR Langley, and he writes in, "Hi David, just viewed this video and found that it was helpful as well, but it fell a bit short for what I was looking for. I have searched almost endlessly to find ways to relate this software to the one I currently use, Sonar Platinum, which has been great until it's not. I can't seem to find a video that will explain to me how to set a count-in measures for recording MIDI, and how to get my preferences on a PC, not a Mac, get to the preferences window. And obviously, I'm a heavy MIDI user that converts MIDI to live audio. I love Studio One, but I am having an issue funneling the overwhelming information that I've been receiving into my brain to relate to my current Sonar Platinum recording flow to a similar and beyond flow in Studio One. Help, please." Okay, so you're trying to switch from Sonar over to Studio One, and whenever you're switching from one DAW to another, I know that it's a pain in the rear at first. It really is. But I can tell you that being someone who is a heavy Cubase user and a heavy Pro Tools user for many years, switching to Studio One was probably the easiest switch I ever made. And the good news is that PreSonus has a wonderful, and Studio One has a wonderful community of people that are very, very helpful. Home recording made easy. Obviously, you stop to the right place for Studio One training. Also, head out to StudioOneExpert.com. Full of videos and training and blogs on Studio One that'll help you. I also highly recommend you go out to the PreSonus user forum and create a user account and join the community over there. The people are great. And there are also several different Facebook groups on Studio One. So being a Cubase user in my past, being a Pro Tools user in my past, I can tell you that the community around Studio One is nothing like anything I've ever experienced, and I mean that in a positive way. And so that's one of the reasons why I really love Studio One. Yes, it's super friendly, user friendly, but also the community is great. So when you're trying to switch from one DAW over to Studio One, we're here to try to help you make that as painless as possible. So now that I got all that out of the way, let me see if I can try to help you here. Now, there's a couple of things you're trying to do. You're trying to do a count-in for when you are recording MIDI. So you can do that in the Metrodome. If you're using a click track, which I assume you are, in the Metrodome settings, and I'll put an image up on the screen, down in when you look at the edit screen on your song file in Studio One, go down to the transport bar along the bottom of the screen and look for the little Metrodome wrench. There's a little wrench there. I'll try to put an image up on the screen where you click on that wrench and you're going to get a dialog box that's going to pop up for the Metrodome. It's the Metrodome settings box. In there, there's a box where you can check off where it'll do a pre-count. So you should be able to do that pre-count thing using the Metrodome settings. So hopefully that answers that part of your question. The next part of your question is you want to get to the preferences window on a PC, not a Mac. Okay, now it is different on a PC than a Mac. Now I don't use a PC, but I know where it is. If you, in your Studio One session, if you go to the top menu bar and go over to I believe it's the options, you go under the options, and there's a choice in there, and I don't think they call it preferences. They call it something different, and I'm not on a PC, so I don't remember off the top of my head. However, I trained some PC users on Skype in the past, and we've done this exact thing, so I know it's there. On a Mac, it's under File, under Preferences. On a PC, it's under Options, and it's under, I don't know if it's called Song. There's one of the choices under the Options menu. That's where you get to the Preferences window. I don't know why it's different for Mac and PC, but I'm sure there's a reason for it, or else it wouldn't be different. So that's where you find that as well. And then also you like to convert MIDI into audio. You can absolutely do that in Studio One, and it's easier to do it in Studio One than any other DAW I've ever used. Again, I don't have Studio One up in front of me, but if you click on your MIDI events that you have, click on the MIDI events, and then right-click on that, and you should find in a menu that pops up, you should find something called Transform, and you're going to transform MIDI into audio. And when you click on that, you're going to get another dialog box. It'll give you some choices on what you want to transform, whether you want to transform MIDI to audio, audio to MIDI. It's going to ask you, when you make that transformation from MIDI to audio, do you want to remove the instrument itself? Do you want to retain the instrument track itself, the MIDI track itself? There's all kinds of choices there. So it's under the transform function in Studio One, and that's how you do all those three things. So I hope that answers your question, and I hope that's been helpful. And if I missed something here, or if you have other questions, again, you can always write in and I'll try to answer it in a video such as this. Or, again, join some of the groups on Facebook. Go over to the PreSonus user forum on PreSonus.com. Wonderful people there, great community of people, and we'll get you switched over from Sonar to Studio One with as the little amount of pain as possible. So again, thanks for writing in. I hope I was able to help you. Now let's move over to question number 3. Okay, last question for this particular segment. We're going to look at question number 3, and it comes in from Roger. And Roger writes in, "Hi David, thanks for all you do for us newbies. I've learned so much from your Made Easy series training videos." Well, thanks Roger, I really do appreciate that. I'm glad the videos are helping you. That's why I created them. What is your opinion using external hardware, preamp, EQ, compression, as opposed to the preamp on my audio interface? I have a PreSonus Studio 192. Will I get a better recorded track through the hardware, and will that allow me to not have to process it as much at the mixing stage? Thanks again, Roger. Well, thanks, Roger, for your question. I get this question kind of a lot. People ask me about this, the differences between recording just through my audio interface or recording through hardware first. Now, first thing is the Studio 192 is an amazing interface, really high quality preamps. You should have no problem getting a well recorded, great sounding track just through the Studio 192. So don't think just by simply just throwing a hardware EQ, compressor, or preamp as opposed to the Studio 192 that you're somehow going to get a better recorded track. That's not necessarily the case. If you're not getting a great recorded sound through the Studio 192, it's something with your recording technique. So that's concern number one. So you shouldn't need to do that. Now, as far as will you get a better sound, and that's a really subjective question. Subjective, better. What does better mean? The reason why you would want to use maybe an external preamp and a compressor, or an external preamp and an EQ, is if you have, if you're looking for something like more of a vintage type of a sound, more of an analog type of a sound. So, for example, if you were going to use something like I don't know, an API preamp, 500 series preamp with, let's say, like a Pultec style EQ in through like maybe an LA2A style, compressor, some tube-based hardware, where it's just going to give you a different tonality than you would get if you recorded directly through the Studio 192 in your example. So again, it's not that it's better, it's just different. Is it going to have a different tonality, a more vintage style flavor, if you will? Yes, if you use those pieces of gear appropriately. So you got to really make sure that when you're recording through, let's say, a preamp into an EQ into a compressor, and you have 3 pieces of hardware, that you have the gain staging correct, that you're that you're doing things in kind of subtle ways, and you're not slamming any one of those pieces of hardware with your input signal. So again, if you do all of that and you use that right, it's just going to give you a different tonality than with the Studio 192. Now, will it allow you to then not have to do as much processing at the mixing stage? Well, that would be one of the benefits to using some external hardware. Not only will you get a different kind of a tone flavor, but then you're kind of making a commitment to the sound on the way into the DAW, whether it's Studio One, Pro Tools, Cubase, or what have you. And therefore, you should have less mixing to do, less EQing to do, less compression to do. That's kind of the point. But again, it all depends on what your situation is and really what you're going for. I would not go with a hardware signal chain just for the sake of it because you think that you're going to get a better sound. Not necessarily true. If you're looking for a different type of sound, a different type of color, that would be a reason to do it. Also consider on something like with the Studio 192 that you can record through the plugins on the, in the Studio 192. They have a DSP chip inside of the interface, much like the Universal Audio Apollo, where you can record through the PreSonus stock plugin. So you can record through an EQ and through a compressor. Now it's going to be a PreSonus stock compressor and a PreSonus stock EQ. using the 192 preamp, and you're going to be able to control the compression and the EQ on the way in. But again, it's stock plugins. They're not vintage style. They don't have that analog flavor or vibe. Again, there's nothing wrong with it. You should still get an excellent sounding track if you do it right, but it's not going to have the tonality differences that some hardware would give you. So I hope that answers your questions. Just some food for thought. I'm not saying it's a bad idea to go through hardware first. I do it with my vocal chains, my vocals that I record in my studio from time to time. I have a hardware vocal chain of analog gear. But know why you're doing it, and if you're doing it for the reasons that I mentioned, then yeah, sure, experiment with it. If you have the budget, you want to do it, or you already have the equipment. But if you're doing it and you're not really sure why, or if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, then I would say you really don't need to do that. But experiment. So I hope that answers your question, Roger. If not, again, send me in another email and I will try to help you even further. So that's it for this week's questions and coffee with David. Again, thanks so much for stopping by and watching this video. And if you like what you see, again, hit that subscribe button, go out to Facebook, go to Twitter, head out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Oh, and by the way, if you want one of your questions answered in an upcoming video of Questions and Coffee with David, please send it to info@homerecordingmadeeasy.com. That's info@homerecordingmadeeasy.com. And I will be sure to feature your question in one of these upcoming videos. So until the next Questions and Coffee video with David, this has been David Vignola with homerecordingmadeeasy.com. I appreciate your support, and I'll speak to you all soon. Take care.